AITA for telling my coworker off because I refused to work on Easter because she has kids. She said I couldn't have my own plans because I didn't have children. I'm a 23-year-old woman, and I work at an upscale hotel in California. I moved out here alone for school, so I don't have any family nearby. I balance work and study, and I'd say I'm pretty independent for my age. The job is good, not perfect, but it pays well enough to survive here, and since I work the night shift at the front desk, it's usually pretty peaceful. If you've ever worked in a hotel, especially the night shift, you know one person can easily handle the desk if they know what they're doing. I'm that person. The night owl. And the youngest person on our team by a decent margin. Most of my coworkers are women between the ages of 25 and 42. All of them have kids. I don't. Which wouldn't matter in any normal job environment, but somehow here, it has become my defining characteristic in the eyes of my coworkers. I'm the one without children, the one who supposedly has no reason to say no when it comes to covering holidays or staying late. It's subtle, but it's there. They don't come out and say it directly, but the implications are loud and clear every time a holiday approaches. Let's rewind to the week leading up to Easter. That particular morning, I was helping out with the morning shift because we were short-staffed, and the topic of holiday scheduling came up. It always comes up. This time it was Easter. Immediately, the conversation turned into a polite but passive-aggressive battle of whose children were younger and more in need of holiday magic. Every single woman in that room started claiming Easter as a sacred day for their family traditions. They were talking about egg hunts and church services and brunches and cute outfits. One even pulled out her phone and showed everyone the matching pastel dresses she got for her daughters. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. In my head, I was thinking, well, it's not going to be me. I worked Christmas voluntarily. I worked Thanksgiving too. I stayed behind while everyone else went home to be with their kids and partners and extended families. I baked cookies alone and FaceTimed my mom from a tiny studio apartment. So this time, I was not going to volunteer. The next day, I saw that one of my coworkers, let's call her Sarah, she's 32 and a mom of 2, had been scheduled to work Easter. I knew she wouldn't like that. Sure enough, within an hour she was in our manager's office. I could hear muffled voices and could practically feel the dramatic sighs through the door. About 8 minutes later, she came out and made a beeline straight to me. She opened with a sugary voice, the kind you use when you're about to ask for a favor but pretend it's not a big deal. She started saying, "Hey, so I was wondering if you could work my shift on Easter so I could," but I cut her off gently but firmly and said, "No, I have plans that day." That's when the mask slipped. Her smile disappeared like someone had hit a switch. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You don't even have kids. You don't understand what it feels like to want to be there for the life you created." She kept going, saying things like how mothers have to sacrifice so much and that I couldn't possibly relate. She said it like she was trying to guilt-trip me into seeing the light, as though being child-free made me morally inferior. Now I was still trying to be calm and professional, so I reminded her that I had covered both Christmas and Thanksgiving so others could be with their families. Only 2 people thanked me for it. She looked at me without blinking and said, "We shouldn't have to thank you for doing what's right." That sentence pissed me off. I stayed calm on the outside, but inside I was boiling. I glanced at the other women around us, expecting someone to say something, anything, but they all just sat there awkwardly. No one backed her up, but no one defended me either. It was like watching a train crash in slow motion and everyone just sat and watched. She wasn't done. She doubled down and said, "What plans could you possibly have? You don't even have family out here." Then she said, "Well, I'm not coming in that day. You're going to have to." I responded with a calm but cold, "We'll see." That apparently made her angrier. She kept pushing. Saying more stuff about how holidays are for families and that I was being selfish. That I would understand someday when I had children of my own. And then she said something about how people without kids don't have real responsibilities. I had reached my limit. I told her, just because I didn't lay down on my back, or in your case, in the back of a car, to have children doesn't mean I don't have things going on in my life. Was that a low blow? Probably. But I was tired of being treated like the team mule just because I didn't have kids. She went completely silent. Her face turned bright red, and she stormed off. I knew instantly she was going to HR. And yes, she did. I got called in that afternoon. I explained everything to HR. I admitted my comment was inappropriate, but I also gave them the full story, including her prior comments, her guilt-tripping, and how the workplace culture was creating this unspoken expectation that people without kids should always take the short end of the stick. The HR rep gave me the usual spiel about professionalism and told me they would follow up with her as well. After that, the tension at work was suffocating. My coworkers didn't say anything directly, but the way they acted toward me changed. I'd walk into the break room and conversations would stop. I'd get side glances during meetings. One of them even moved their stuff off the desk we sometimes shared. Finally, I had enough. I spoke up one morning while we were all gathered in the back office before our shift started. I told them I wasn't trying to undermine anyone's role as a mother. I respected that. I acknowledged that I don't know what it feels like to have a child depending on me. But I also made it clear that just because I don't have a child doesn't mean my time is worthless. That I shouldn't be expected to give up my holidays, my plans, or my peace of mind so others could always have theirs protected. That the job shouldn't revolve around who has children and who doesn't. It got quiet after that. No one said anything to my face, but I could tell some of them were processing it. One of the older women came up to me later and said she respected what I said and that I had a right to speak up for myself. Another one just shrugged and said, "You still shouldn't have said what you said to Sarah though." Fair. I wasn't proud of that part. My mom said the same thing when I told her. She said, "You're not wrong, but your delivery was harsh. You'll understand sacrifice more when you become a mother." Maybe she's right. Maybe I will. But that doesn't mean my current sacrifices, working nights, being alone during holidays, missing out on my own life just to be seen as a team player, don't matter. So yeah, maybe I said something I shouldn't have. But after months of quiet resentment and being treated like the default holiday filler just because I don't have a child, I finally snapped. I'm not asking for pity, but I am asking for fairness. So am I the asshole? Update 1. I really thought the HR meeting would cool things down. I had done my part, I owned what I said, I acknowledged that it was inappropriate, and I agreed to move forward professionally. I wasn't looking to hold a grudge, and I certainly wasn't interested in prolonging whatever passive-aggressive feud was brewing between me and Sarah. But apparently, Sarah didn't get the same memo. About a week after the whole Easter scheduling drama, I was walking into work for my night shift when Sarah intercepted me in the hallway. Her tone had changed. The mom guilt angle was gone, replaced with something more polished, like she'd spent the last few days rehearsing what she was going to say. She mentioned that she knew things got heated between us and then tried to present the request as a matter of team spirit, saying it was just one Sunday and that she thought I'd reconsider now that things had settled down. I told her once again, calmly, directly, that I had plans that day and would not be working for her. I thought the firmness in my voice would make it clear that this was the end of the discussion. It wasn't. Subtle things began happening during my shifts. At first, I didn't immediately connect the dots. I thought people were just slipping up because it had been a hectic week. But then it became too consistent to ignore. The daily turnover report that was usually prepared with care and detail before the night shift was suddenly sloppy or incomplete. A few times, the report wasn't even done at all. I'd walk into a mess that I had to clean up and refile before I could even begin my actual duties. That alone was frustrating, but then it escalated. The reservation system, which we all know requires a secure login, started showing up as logged out when I came in. I'd have to scramble to reset it with the front desk's shared credentials, wasting precious minutes. One night, I found the key card printer unplugged entirely. I actually laughed out loud in disbelief when I saw it. These were small inconveniences, but they added up. They threw off my rhythm. They made it seem like I was either careless or disorganized, and I knew exactly how it would look to someone who wasn't in the loop. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions without proof. I'm not the kind of person who wants to play office detective or stir up more drama. But then came the night with the VIP guest. Our general manager, Tom, came down to the front desk around midnight with this look on his face that I immediately recognized. It was the expression of someone trying to stay calm while clearly not happy. He asked why our VIP guest hadn't received their welcome package. I blinked at him and told him I hadn't even received a note about a VIP check-in, which is standard procedure. He looked surprised and said that the guest had checked in during the afternoon shift, which meant the ball had been in Sarah's court. I felt a slow burn rising in my chest. The next morning, I asked Sarah about it. She gave me this half shrug, smiled like she wasn't taking any of this seriously, and said something about forgetting. Then added that I always seemed to have everything under control, with just enough sarcasm to make my stomach churn. It didn't take a genius to see what was happening. She was trying to undermine me. Make me look like I couldn't handle basic tasks. Slowly chip away at my reputation so that the team, or worse, management, would start to doubt me. So I started documenting everything. I created a folder on my personal drive. Screenshots. Time-stamped notes. Photos of unplugged equipment. Copies of shift reports. Everything that felt off went into that file. I kept a detailed log, nothing speculative, just the facts. After about a week of collecting evidence, I sent it all to HR. I explained what had been going on, that while I had already owned up to my inappropriate comment, what Sarah was doing now wasn't just petty, it was calculated. It felt like workplace sabotage. And frankly, it was beginning to affect my ability to do my job without unnecessary stress or obstacles. HR got back to me fairly quickly, saying they would schedule a follow-up meeting for conflict resolution. I didn't love the idea, but I went along with it. I had already said everything I needed to say, and I figured if we sat in a room with a neutral party, Sarah would at least back off. What actually happened was far more frustrating. We met in one of the small conference rooms with a representative from HR, someone new I hadn't dealt with before. Sarah walked in acting like we were two coworkers who had simply had a miscommunication over paperclips. She smiled sweetly, sat with her legs crossed, and told the HR rep that she was so surprised I felt this way and that I must be misinterpreting things. Then came the dagger. She said she worried I was a little too sensitive, being away from family and all, and that I might be projecting loneliness or stress onto our work dynamic. I nearly choked. She said it in this patronizing, syrupy voice like she was doing me a favor by even sitting there. It was so fake it was physically painful to sit through. I stayed calm. I presented my evidence. I explained how each incident lined up. I didn't accuse. I described. I stuck to the facts. The HR rep listened and said all the usual things about communication styles and workplace expectations. No formal action was taken. No real accountability was demanded. Instead, they wrapped it up by saying that they would keep an eye on the situation and encouraged both of us to be more mindful in our interactions moving forward. The meeting ended. Sarah stood up, smiled again, and walked out like she had just finished a friendly catch-up coffee. And just like that, I realized this wasn't over. HR said they would monitor the situation. Update 2. This one actually stunned me. Easter weekend finally rolled around, and I had made my boundaries crystal clear. I was not working. I wasn't on the schedule, I hadn't agreed to cover anyone, and I had real, solid plans. A classmate from school had invited me to dinner with her family. They knew I didn't have anyone local to celebrate with, and they were incredibly warm and welcoming. It was going to be my first normal holiday in years, one where I wasn't stuck behind a desk making sure someone else's holiday went smoothly while mine disappeared into fluorescent lighting and silence. I had gotten a cute dress for the occasion, picked up a bottle of wine as a hostess gift, and even helped my classmate plan the dessert course. For once, I wasn't going to be the one on call. I was going to be a guest, a person who mattered. And I was excited. That morning before Easter, just as I was putting the wine in a gift bag and checking my nails for chips, my phone rang. It was Tom, our general manager. His voice was tight, frazzled in a way that made my stomach flip before he even said a word. He told me that Sarah had called him in tears with some kind of family emergency. He didn't know the specifics, but apparently no one else could cover, and I was the only option. That familiar hotel pressure crept in like a fog, thick and suffocating. The unspoken rule was clear: if you're the youngest, the newest, the one without kids or ties, you say yes. Always. I asked for details. I needed something more than vague emotional panic to give up my first holiday that actually meant something to me. Tom paused, too long, and then admitted that Sarah hadn't given any specifics, only that she was upset and it was urgent. I sat with that for a second, my instincts practically screaming. It felt wrong. It smelled like manipulation, and I was done being the fallback plan. I told Tom I couldn't cancel my plans and that I hoped everything was okay but I wouldn't be coming in. He sighed, thanked me anyway, and hung up. 2 hours later, I was scrolling through stories on Instagram while waiting for my ride, and there it was. Clear as day. Sarah. Dressed in a white sundress with oversized sunglasses, clinking mimosas with a group of equally well-dressed women at an outdoor wine brunch. The caption read, "Bunnies and Bellinis with my girls," followed by an obscene number of flower emojis. I blinked. Then blinked again. I turned the volume on and caught the unmistakable sound of laughter and brunch playlist music in the background. There was zero trace of an emergency. She wasn't in crisis. She was in Napa. I screenshotted the story so fast I nearly dropped my phone. It was time-stamped. Geotagged. There were multiple people tagged in the post, friends who were also sharing their own stories from the same location. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a miscommunication. It was a bold-faced lie. I didn't wait. I wrote an email to HR right then and there. I explained that Sarah had fabricated a family emergency to get out of her shift, that she had manipulated Tom into pressuring me with that lie, and that I had proof. I attached screenshots and detailed the timeline. I CC'd Tom so he would see it too, not out of spite, but because he deserved to know he was used. I kept it professional but thorough. I didn't even let myself cool off before hitting send. I wanted it raw, real, and time-stamped. HR responded the next morning with a brief note saying they were reviewing the situation. That was all they said, and I didn't hear anything else for a while. I went to work that night like usual. The front desk felt different, quieter, heavier. My coworkers weren't avoiding me, but they weren't exactly rushing to say hello either. A few of them had probably seen the same stories I had. Gossip travels faster than guest checkouts in that place. Monday rolled around, and Sarah wasn't at work. Her name wasn't on the schedule. Her shift was blank. Nobody said anything officially, but the rumors were immediate and loud. Someone had heard she was suspended pending an investigation. Someone else said HR had called her in for a formal hearing. One of the newer front desk associates whispered that Sarah had been so dramatic during the meeting that she cried again, this time in front of 2 HR reps and Tom. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need the satisfaction of knowing how uncomfortable it made her. I just needed to know that it wasn't swept under the rug. The next few days passed with a strange energy. It felt like everyone was walking on eggshells, especially around me. I was civil, professional, and laser-focused. I wasn't there to stir the pot, I just wanted to do my job and not feel like I had to watch my back every second. When you're the youngest and the only one without a built-in support system at work, you don't get the luxury of slipping up. You play everything by the book. I made sure my logs were immaculate. My reports were flawless. My interactions were neutral and kind. I didn't want to give anyone a reason to say I had a chip on my shoulder. And then the following Monday came. I had just clocked in and was restocking the guest snack bar when I felt that familiar shift in the air. I turned my head and saw her. Sarah. She walked in like nothing had happened, dressed in her usual heels and blazer, talking to one of the concierge team like it was any other Monday morning. She didn't smile. She didn't scowl. She just walked past the desk, went to the break room, and disappeared behind the door. She didn't even look in my direction. Update 3. I thought after the suspension, things might finally settle down. I didn't expect warm hugs and heartfelt apologies, but I did think we could at least operate in a shared space without passive-aggressive games or workplace sabotage. I wasn't looking for reconciliation, I just wanted neutrality. Mutual indifference would have been a step up from the toxicity of the previous weeks. I focused on my job, kept my head down, and kept doing what I always did, show up, do it right, and go home. But Sarah wasn't done. She had one last stunt in her. About 2 days after she returned from her suspension, I was prepping for a site tour with a big corporate client, one of the largest accounts our hotel had been courting in months. It was a last-minute booking that had come together quickly, and everyone was on high alert to make sure it went off without a hitch. The kind of client that didn't just bring one big booking, but repeat business, event planning, and word-of-mouth referrals. The type of account that could influence our quarter. I had spent most of the week getting everything ready. The tour was scheduled for the following morning, and the night before, I was set to check all the finishing touches, room arrangements, catering confirmations, AV equipment setups, and of course, the state of the main conference room. That room was the showpiece. Polished floors, fresh floral arrangement, every chair perfectly aligned. It had to be flawless. Sarah had the evening shift. I came in at the usual time for nights, expecting to do the usual brief handoff and finish the final prep. But when I arrived, I immediately noticed something off. The conference room was locked. Not just closed, fully locked. That was strange, because per protocol, it was supposed to be left open and prepped the night before any event. I looked around for the key, checked the front desk drawer, the maintenance closet, even the little dish we sometimes tossed spare keys into. Nothing. I asked Sarah casually if she had it, and she turned to me with this smirk like she had just remembered something mildly inconvenient and said she'd taken it home by mistake. Said it so breezily, so unbothered, with that same faux innocence that had come up before. My gut told me it wasn't a mistake at all. I didn't react. No frustration. No eye roll. No comment. Just silence. Then I quietly stepped away and texted Tom, explained what had happened, and then got on the phone with maintenance. I wasn't going to let her win, not like that. Maintenance was surprisingly fast. They had a master key, of course, and within 15 minutes, I had the door open and the conference room fully visible. It was a mess. Chairs pushed out of line, the welcome table disorganized, and a faint coffee rain on the edge of the podium. Nothing catastrophic, but enough that it would have made us look careless if the client had walked in like that. I got to work. I wiped everything down. I adjusted each chair. I called room service to swap out the stale cookies with a fresh spread. I checked the AV cables myself and confirmed the projector was synced. I even straightened the informational brochures on the table. By the time I was done, the room looked like a magazine spread. The next day, the tour went better than anyone expected. The client was thrilled. They complimented everything from the ambience to the attention to detail to the friendliness of the overnight staff. They sent a glowing email thanking the hotel and calling out the front desk in particular for their professionalism and preparedness. Tom forwarded the email to the entire staff that afternoon. At the bottom of his message, he added a note that said, "This is what proactive leadership looks like. Let's all take a moment to appreciate the kind of behind-the-scenes work that elevates this team." It wasn't directed at anyone specifically, but everyone knew. And about 10 minutes later, he called me into his office. I walked in expecting maybe a handshake or a thank you. Instead, he offered me a promotion on the spot. Effective immediately, I was the new assistant front office manager. I didn't hesitate. I accepted. It felt surreal. All those long nights, all that silent professionalism, all the boundaries I had been shamed for having, it was finally paying off. News spread fast. The congratulatory smiles came quickly from the people who had stayed neutral. Even some who had previously aligned more with Sarah looked quietly impressed. No one said anything to my face, but you could feel the shift. Respect, even if grudging. One of the newer hires, a younger mom, pulled me aside later that week. She apologized. Said she had never really thought about how unfair some of the expectations had been until I stood up for myself. Said she appreciated what I had done for the rest of them by not caving. It was a small moment, but it meant something. Sarah didn't say a word when she found out. She didn't complain, didn't argue, didn't cause a scene. She just went quiet. Her expression barely changed, but something in her demeanor told me she knew the game was over. About a week later, she put in her notice. 2 weeks, no drama. She didn't say where she was going. She didn't say goodbye to most people. I didn't ask. I didn't care. Since she left, things have been lighter. Not perfect, but smoother. The shift handovers are cleaner. The quiet little side eyes have mostly faded. A few linger here and there, from people who still see me as the outsider, the one without a husband or kids or a long tenure. But those stares don't stick like they used to. They slide off. Because now, I'm not just the young one. I'm not just the one without children. I'm the assistant front office manager who proved she could hold her own. And to everyone who said I was selfish or didn't understand sacrifice, turns out I didn't need to be a mother to know that my time and energy are valuable. I just needed to respect myself enough to say no, even when it wasn't convenient. Even when it wasn't popular. Even when it meant standing alone. And in the end, it paid off.